Hey everyone, this is a review of the Ryobi link organization system. This is a comprehensive system Ryobi has designed for transporting tools, storing tools, and organizing them. I've had this thing for about 10 months, closing in on a year, up in my garage, so I'm going to give you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and show you all the features it has. Now, full disclosure, Ryobi did send me most of what is on this wall for review. That was the initial, when they sent stuff, they sent the shelves, the rails, and most of these hooks. Since then, I liked it enough that I bought an additional dozen rails. I bought the small toolbox, the storage crate, and the foam for the small toolbox, and some extra hooks. So the heart and soul of the system is these rails. They're a 32-inch long rail with 2 attachment points on each end and 2 in the middle. And they're designed around a 16-inch on-center stud. So they've got a little bit of leeway. It's about a 1/2 inch to 5/8 inch slot. So if your studs aren't perfectly spaced at 16 inches on center, it's okay. You can make it work. They've also got additional spots along here you can drill if for some reason you need to set this off center from being perfectly aligned with the studs. Say you don't have enough space on one end, you can index it over and drill through these slots right here and still mount it to a stud. And you don't want to use drywall anchors because these are rated for 75 pounds a foot if you have them securely fastened to studs. The end design of these is nested so that you can actually fit 2 on the same stud, which is a really great feature. They just all got a cutout like this, and they line up vertically, and you don't have to worry about, trying to split the difference on the center of a stud. Now, I've got mine spaced with room for 1 slat in between each of these. I think that's the ideal spacing. I've seen a lot of stuff on social media where people have just a solid wall of these. I think they're too expensive to do that because you lose a lot of storage space. You can't fit everything everywhere. And I think this is a much better use of the cost of these rails versus your usable storage space out of it. Whenever you put stuff on it, you do end up with slots that you can't really fit anything else on. And if you have them down here, you're covering up a lot more useful space if you pack them close together. Now, the way these attachment hooks work is this is just a folded stamped piece of metal that fits within the slots here and has like a spot that hooks onto the cleat. And then you've got just the welded wire stuck on top of that. And they make a variety of different versions of these. There's a bunch of different versions. There's power tool hooks, large power tool hooks, double hooks, utility hooks, just lots of different options for whatever you need to hang. So they go on, these little feet go into these slots, and then the whole thing just kind of slides down and in and clicks in there pretty securely. It'll still come up just by pushing upwards, but nothing like pegboard walls. If you've ever had a pegboard that the hooks just fall off for no reason when you just look at them, these are in there pretty securely, and you really have to put quite a bit of upward force to get them to come off, which I really like. And if you really want to make them secure, they've all got a hole in the center, and you notice there's a hole right here. You can just run a screw straight in there and get some extra retention out of it. All right, let's talk about strength. These rails are rated for 75 pounds a foot. I have had this large, extra large utility hook with a 50-pound or a 45-pound ladder hanging from it for almost an entire year. There is a little bit of sagging, probably about a 1/2 inch away from the wall right here, but it's holding up pretty well, and I think that wall is actually a little bit warped as well. So it's held up well, it's sagged less than I thought it might, and that's part of the reason I took so long to do this review, is to make sure this thing wasn't just gonna rip off the wall when you put a heavy weight on there for a long time. Just to give you a close-up here, I can fit my fingers behind this. This end is still securely against the wall, and then over on this side on the same rail, I can just, you got maybe a 1/16 of an inch it's pulled away. So even with the ladder off, it does still have that gap, so it is permanent deformation, but you can see it really doesn't deflect that much downward when I load it up. Now, one thing I was a little bit worried about was how these would fit on the intersection between 2 of the rails, and I haven't had any problems. I just butted my rails up to each other as close as they would go when I was installing, and hooks fit perfectly fine in between each of those. So Ryobi had good tolerances when they put this together, and everything works seamlessly. You can hang stuff in between the two rails with no problems. Ryobi has two different shelf types that they have. These are powder-coated metal. They've got one that's just a generic shelf with hooks underneath it. And then they've got a power tool shelf, which holds a bunch of 18 or 12 volt power tools. And it's also got a little front organizer section that's about an inch deep. And then it's got a wider shelf behind it and some screwdriver and plier slots on the sides. This one is my favorite of the two. It takes a ton of power tools. You can double stack them in here for most of them. So I think you can usually hold up to 8 power tools depending on their size. These little organizer bins, they're either a double bin with a divider in the center or a single bin, fit in the toolboxes, and they also go on the walls. They're really nice to store small stuff and move it around. Now, the one thing I do not recommend on this whole system is this S-hook. I finally found something that will actually hang in it and not slip out. And that's a thicker pole like this paint roller extension. If you try something thinner like this broom and try to put it in there, it just slides right out and lands on whatever's below it. So really don't get these S-hooks unless you have some really wide-handled tools that you can't hang any other way. I think the double hooks and the utility hooks are much better for garden rakes and things like that. Now, you might have noticed I have a Ryobi charger sitting on my link wall, and they don't currently make a charger that is compatible with the link system. So I did some customization. I designed and 3D printed some pieces that will allow me to lock stuff in to link. I'll actually put a link to the STL files that are free to download in the video description if you want to check these out if you have a 3D printer. And I also recently made one of these for my Tough Built tool bags as well, that just takes their ClipTech adapter and screws it into a link compatible bracket. STL file is for this in my video description too. And that just allows you to use the two systems together. One of my favorite features about this is the crates can lock on with the back here, so you can just set the whole crate on the wall and then pull it off and move it around, and you can stack it and lock it with the rest of the toolboxes. I think that's a great feature on this, and this is actually kind of turned into my garage junk drawer. I just cleaned it out, but it's right next to my door. When I have something I need to put away in the garage, I just usually open the door and chuck it in here. And then when I get a chance later, I can pick this whole thing up off the wall and take it around to where it needs to go and put everything away. So that's actually worked really well for me. Now, one additional benefit of this system is the tool crates can be placed directly on your wall grid. If you've really got to get them up and out of the way, there's usually probably a better place to store these than taking up a ton of wall space, but you can do it if you want to. The only complaint I have is they're a little bit sketchy to get down because you got to push up here on the bottom for the catch release. I guess you can kind of hold the handle here. Make sure you're holding it back up right here, because otherwise the whole thing will flop out and just kind of smack you on the head. So push up and then guide it down. If it's really heavy, you might end up banging your knuckles against this when it flips down. But it's doable. It's a little bit challenging sometimes to get it up there and locked in, but it locks in once it's up there. You can hang it by either the front or the back cleats. I would recommend always hanging it by the top cleats. I would not recommend hanging it by the bottom ones on a single rail. All right, let's talk about the toolboxes themselves. They lock together on the top. They've got a little button that you press to lift them off. The nice thing about these, unlike things like the pack out, you can push these down to lock them together, and it just locks. There's nothing you have to do other than just setting it down. You don't have to push it in and slide it. When you pick them up, you just push the button, it picks up right off. You don't have to worry about sliding it. So that's nice. It's not quite as secure as some of the other systems. If you really, well, okay, it's pretty secure. I've been in the store before and pulled two of these apart. I can't do it now. So there you go. It's pretty secure. The thing I like about this is it latches on the entire top of the lid, which is going to be stronger than just having side latches. Because most other systems latch on the side. Now, one thing that's interesting on the bottom of this, the whole bottom is actuated. See that one button pushes down all of these individual pieces? and it's spring loaded, and there's actually like a piece that's screwed on here in the bottom to capture that mechanism. The reason Ryobi has the cleats active instead of passive is Milwaukee has a pack out patent that they just have a latch that comes down here in the front, and that's why they have a slide mechanism. It's simpler, there's less to go wrong with it, but Ryobi has come up with a workaround around that design. And while Milwaukee and Ryobi have the same parent company, TTI, they do not share intellectual property. Now, there is more of a chance for this getting gummed up because there's so much moving here, especially if you drag this through the mud. I can see you having problems getting the latching mechanism to work. You can take it apart if it does get jammed, but that's only after you've successfully separated them from each other. So there is the potential for failure. I'm not planning on dragging mine through the mud. I don't think a little dust is going to gum this up. I think you're going to have something substantial in there to jam it. So I think it's a pretty good design. Now, one thing I don't like about these boxes is they will not stand upright. Now, one really nice thing about these crates is they don't have to be just on the top of your stack. They can be in the middle of it. So you can take a toolbox or another crate and set it on top. Now, it doesn't self-actuate like it does setting on top of the toolbox, so you have to push the button in, and it settles into place, and now it's locked, and they'll stick together. The storage crate also has what looks like you can fit an 1/8" plywood divider in here. Maybe they're going to come out with a future divider that Ryobi sells as well, but it looks like you could fairly simply make your own. The latches on the toolbox are pretty sturdy. They're a steel wire, and they've got a steel pin right here holding the hinges together. So it opens up. It's got a gasket all the way around the outside, so it is a waterproof toolbox. And then for the inside, you can buy custom cut foam. I was a little bit disappointed with how loose this is. This will fall right out if you tilt it upright. I've done other foam companies that custom cut this stuff, and it fits perfectly. And you can see this has got room to move it. I don't know, maybe the other toolboxes are a little bit narrow at the bottom because of the draft angle. Maybe that's it, and they just made a one size fits all. But this doesn't fit as well as I'd like it to. I'm eventually going to do a custom toolbox. I haven't decided what I'm putting in this one yet, but it is a nice spacious toolbox that's got a lot of room for stuff in it. Now, each one of these does come with a small organizer and a big organizer, and they have little feet that lock on to the bottom in here. So you can put them right there and lock them on and close it up. And we'll see if they stick in place. I haven't really tested this that much. No, they don't. So that would have been nice to be a little bit more secure. They didn't tip over though, so I doubt they would have spilled stuff, but they did move around a little bit. That's just a little bit disappointing. So they do have a built-in bit holder. I guess that's a pretty nice feature. It flips down, and it doesn't come with these holders, but if you buy Ryobi bits, they have the same holders that pop out of the bit cases and pop right in here, so you can put your custom bit selection in there. These are just standard 1/4" hex bits, so you can put any type of 1/4" hex bit in those holders, and it'll work. Now, it is nice to have this bit holder, but it keeps you from putting bins all the way across here. I mean, there's room to put, 4 rows of these bins where the feet let you lock them in. However, you can only put them at the far sides, because otherwise, if you put them anywhere else, you can't close the lid because of the bit holder. So that's just something to keep in mind. You can only fit, if you wanted to go buy extra bins for these, you can only fit 2 on each side. Ryobi does have an organizer coming out that doesn't have the bit holder in it that will be all organizer bins. So that's nice that they're continuing to come out with these options. So if you're wondering what the future of Link looks like, what Ryobi might come out with eventually, the answer is they're planning a lot. I found a few patents for their Link system and on what they might be planning on introducing in the future. None of these are guaranteed because they're just patents, but some of the ideas are sports organizers, baskets that work with the wall rails, a hand truck that can handle the toolboxes or the totes, shelves that go on the top of the Link rails, a fold-down workbench built into the Link rails that you can fold down and then fold up when you're done. Also a racking system for the toolboxes with optional shelves or workbench spots on the whole thing that could be used for a work trailer. So you can hold the toolboxes horizontal instead of having to hold them up against the rails vertically. There are also half-width toolboxes pictured and described, small bit storage containers that look like they'll fit on top of a toolbox or also on the rail system, and also a modular workstation, which is the form factor of one of these toolboxes that you can click different tools into, have like a little rotary tool workstation on it, and it sits on the top of the stack of all of these linked toolboxes. So Ryobi has really done a lot of thinking and planning with this system, and I'm glad to see they're continuing to release new products, and they're continuing to plan for future products as well. Now, a lot of you guys are DIYers just like me, and before I had any of the Ryobi Link system, I had made a French cleat wall system for all my garage stuff. And it works great. It's custom made to what I want. I can take these hangers and move them with infinite adjustability side to side. I don't have to just hit a cleat location. So it's a little more storage density that I can squeeze out of it. However, this does take a lot more time to make and hang than it does to just throw the link rails up on the wall. There's also, I mean, if I'm making crates that are going to be compatible with it, it's a lot more work. So I think there are distinct advantages to both systems. I still use both. I still make more hangers for these, and I still buy more of the link stuff or make my own custom cleats for it. So I think both solutions are great. It just depends on whether you want to spend a little bit more money or you want to spend a little bit more time to have your organization system made. So let's talk value with this system. It is a little bit pricier than I'd like. The rails themselves, you can get a 4-pack. When they came out, it was priced at $60 for a 4-pack, which I thought was a little bit high, but okay, it's doable. They've since raised it to $80 for a 4-pack, which I think is too high. But I've bought an extra set of 4 rails myself at $60, and when I've seen it on sale for 50% off, I've bought 2 additional 4-packs of rails. So I bought a dozen rails myself, but not at the full price of $80. The hooks and attachments are pretty much the same. If I see them on sale, I'll buy some more. I think they're a little bit pricey by themselves. I think your best bet is getting a couple starter kits if you find a deal on them and building out from there. So overall, I think Ryobi has done a great job designing the link system. They've come up with shelves, wall rails, toolboxes that are all compatible. They've got some patents out there that show they might be working on more stuff. And they've also continued to release new boxes like the drawer boxes coming out next year, as well as storage containers and organizers and things like that. So it shows me they're committed to this system and they're continuing to develop new products for it, which gives me a lot of confidence in it. So hopefully this review was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments section below. And once again, don't forget to subscribe.